First of all, welcome everyone to today's webinar on electrofuels or e-fuels that we call in short. So before we dive into the topic and we talk about e-fuels a little bit deeper, let's just have a brief introduction to the panelists today. So I myself, I'm Pankaj, currently working at TechVision Frost Sullivan. I've been part of the team for more than 3 years now, and I work within the energy environment clusters here. I've been joined by my colleagues, Soumyadeep Roy Chaudhary and Rishika Mohanty, along with Edward Cubero from Emoji, based out of US. So maybe if you can introduce yourself very briefly, Soumyadeep and Rishika, we can just, after that, we can move forward with the webinar.
Sure. Hello, my name is Shomadip. I am working with Frost for the past 3 years now. I have a total experience of 15 years and predominantly working on ICT. Look forward to our session today.
Thank you, Soumyadeep. Rishika?
Thank you, Pankaj. Hi, I'm Rishika, and I have been with Frost as a research analyst with TechVision, and I closely work with Pankaj in the E&E, which is Energy, Environment, and Utilities and Sustainability domain. I have a background in chemical engineering prior to that from Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai, and I've been also a part of a lot of alternate fuels projects, so hope to contribute a little more here in the webinar.
Thank you, Rishika. Apart from my internal colleagues, we are also joined by Edward Cubero from Emoji. So add a small brief from your side as well.
Hi, my name is Ed Cubero, and I'm in the strategy team at Emoji. We are a startup based in Brooklyn, New York, and we're developing an ammonia to power technology. So great to be here.
Thank you so much, everyone. All right, so now let's begin with the actual webinar content. So first up, we have the overall focus points for today. What are the key areas that we're focusing on today? So first up, we'll have a small introduction to alternative fuel landscape. What is happening commercially? What is the growth pipeline looking like? And then we'll also have the introduction to e-fuels, basically the overlay and what typical processes we are using today to synthesize e-fuels. Then we'll deep dive into e-fuel in terms of their value chain analysis, as well as what are the various pathways that are used, and we'll talk more in details about them in the second section. The third section, we'll have it basically on the stakeholder analysis, what companies and what startups are basically playing a pivotal role in commercialization of e-fuels. And then we'll also have curated content from Emoji, throwing light on what they are doing in this domain as well. And the last section will have what are the future focus, or what are the future plan that looks like ahead for e-fuels from our perspective. So we'll discuss on that as well. So let's get into the first topic as of now. Okay, so this is on alternative fuels. So typically, what are alternative fuels if we define them? They are basically fuels that are derived partly or wholly from a renewable source, not our typical hydrocarbon derived from fossil fuels that we have as gasoline or diesel that we use typically. And the expectation from alternative fuels is that they have a reduced environmental and emission impact. So the processing, the extraction, the usage of alternative fuels should save that amount of the environmental burden. Now we have three broad categories of alternative fuels here. First is your biofuels that are derived from carbon-based, biosources, including biodiesel, biomethanol, bioethanol, and bio-SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. We also have biogases that are derived from a range of sources, including, biomass and pyrolysis, gasification, and we have typical fuels like biomethane, sludge gas, landfill gas in this classification. And the third type that we'll be talking about today in this webinar is e-fuels. So e-fuels is basically electrofuels, as the name suggests. Electro, it's coming from electricity in a way, because the processing pathway of e-fuels starts with the production of hydrogen from renewable electricity, right? So we have several types of e-fuels that we'll discuss on: e-methane, e-methanol, e-SAF, e-diesel, e-gasoline, as well as e-ammonia. That we'll also take a deeper look into that in the subsequent slides. Now, On the right, if you see, there's a very interesting graph that we have, and it shows the annual production of alternative fuels starting from 2024, going all the way to 2030, as well as the global revenue in this alternative fuels domain in the same year range. So if you look at the annual production, it's in million tons per annum. We're starting from a level of around 158 MTPA in 2024, and the expectation is that it will grow to 437 uh, million tons per annum by 2030 within the range of 6 years. So this is showing a CAGR growth of 18.5%. So that's a very interesting number to look at, and it's basically slightly less than tripling in these 6 years. So any industry that grows at such a pace cannot be overlooked, right? There's a lot of stakeholder activity that comes up into areas like this. It's not just about the annual production in terms of volume. If you look at the revenue part as well in billions USD, we are starting from a level of 412 in 2024, and we are crossing 1 trillion by 2030. We are reaching a level of 1.14 trillion by 2030. So you can imagine it's a very big market, and it's going to be even bigger in the next 5 to 7 years as we envision it at Frost & Sullivan. Now, if you look at what are the typical application areas that are driving this growth, transportation sector is the majority of, is leading the alternative fuel market growth by the majority. It had 53% market share, primarily driven by mandates or cutting down, emissions within the city, outside of the city, and a lot of policy push as well in this domain. So overall, the pie of alternative fuel is growing, has grown in the past years, and also is expected to grow very exponentially in the next 5 to 7 years as well. So e-fuels can become a really important part in this market going forwards. That is what we expect. Now, if we talk about e-fuels, what are e-fuels? First of all, we have to define that, right? So e-fuels are basically a combination of renewable hydrogen as well as captured carbon dioxide. Now, renewable hydrogen is typically called as green hydrogen. It is made by the electrolysis of water via various pathways that we have: alkaline electrolysis, PEM electrolysis, solid oxide electrolysis, and we also have the emerging domain of membrane-less electrolysis as well. If that is combined with captured carbon dioxide, either from direct air carbon capture or point source carbon capture, like the carbon that we generate in industries, flue gases, we capture carbon from there, and then we combine these together in accordance with various choices of pathways that we have, we can form e-fuels. So it's a very broad range of fuels that we are talking about here, and it's not just fuels. E-fuels also are something that are used as feedstock for production of final products in various kind of industries. So we'll throw light on it in the subsequent slides, but in this webinar, we'll be talking about 4 major pathways of e-fuels production. First one is the Fischer-Tropsch process that involves the production of syngas. Syngas is nothing, just the combination of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. It is then processed and then converted to various kind of fuels like e-diesel, e-kerosene, e-naphtha, etc. Next up, we have the Haber-Bosch process that basically leads to the formation of e-ammonia by combining hydrogen with nitrogen. And then ammonia, as we know, is used in a lot of fertilizer industry to form fertilizers. And we'll have we have Ed here to talk about it in more detail and what Amoji is doing in this domain as well. That is also very interesting to look at. Now, third up, we have the methanol synthesis. Now, it's a process wherein we are using a lot of catalyst and special reaction conditions to form e-methanol, CH3OH, which is then again processed to form e-gasoline, e-SAF, etc. kind of fuels. And the last up, we have the methanation process, which is again an exothermic process, which is carried out in the presence of catalysts to form e-methane. E-methane can be used as a direct replacement of natural gas that we call as renewable natural gas. So overall, what we are doing is that we are converting the carbon dioxide, captured carbon dioxide, and renewable hydrogen into energy-dense fuel molecules by a variety of processing pathways. So next up, we'll have the value chain analysis of e-fuels, how they are formed, what are the various pathways, the nitty-gritties of that, which will be talked about by Rishika.
So before we deep dive, I want to say why we need e-fuel in the first place. As you can see that biofuels are getting momentum in the early 2020s, but that started with a food to fuel debate. And it also cannot electrify, or it cannot access the hard to abate sectors for which we need e-fuels. So let's start by walking through how the entire e-fuel value chain works step by step. It begins with renewable electricity, that's the backbone. Solar, wind, or hydro energy generates clean power. This electricity feeds into an electrolyzer, which splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen that we get here is called green hydrogen. We have other types of hydrogen as well, but mainly green hydrogen are the ones that has been created by renewable electricity only, because it is produced without emitting CO2. This green hydrogen then combines with captured carbon dioxide, which we can source either from industrial exhaust gases or from direct air capture. So now we have our two main ingredients, hydrogen and carbon dioxide, and we can synthesize them into different liquids or gaseous fuels using chemical conversion technologies. Now there are four key conversion pathways that define what product you end up with: Fischer-Tropsch, methanol synthesis, methanation, and Haber-Bosch. Each of these leads to different fuels for different uses: aviation, shipping, road transport, or industrial chemicals. So let's start with Fischer-Tropsch. This is the pathway used for e-diesel, e-kerosene, naphtha, and SAF. Here, hydrogen and CO2 are first converted from syngas to which is the mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. The syngas is passed over a cobalt or iron catalyst at around 200 to 350, 400 Celsius, at around 10 to 40 bar pressure, and produces long-chain hydrocarbons. These hydrocarbons are then refined or upgraded into diesel, jet fuel, or naphtha. Basically the same molecules as in fossil fuels, just made synthetically. The beauty of Fischer-Tropsch is that they are drop-in compatible. They can go directly into existing engines and pipelines. But the limitation lies in efficiency. The FT route has an overall conversion efficiency from electricity to liquid fuel of around 45% to 55%, depending on the system design and heat recovery. It's energy intensive, but produces premium quality fuels for aviation and shipping. Then let's go to the second pathway, which also produces a liquid, which is the methanol synthesis. And it's the simplest and one of the most commercialized e-fuel routes. Here, hydrogen reacts with CO2 over copper, zinc, and alumina catalyst at around 200 to 300 degrees Celsius and at around 50 to 100 bar, producing methanol and water. Methanol is very versatile. It can be blended directly into fuels or used as marine fuel or converted further into gasoline or even olefins for plastics. And it has a relatively higher efficiency than Fischer-Tropsch. It has 55 to 65% overall electrical to fuel efficiency when coupled with effective heat recovery. That's why you can see companies like Liquid Wind, European Energy focusing heavily on producing e-methanol. It's a scalable, proven method that serves both the fuel as well as the chemical markets. Then let's go to the third process, which is methanation. Here also, hydrogen reacts with carbon, but we get a gas. The process is a Sabatier reaction, and it happens around 250 to 400 degrees Celsius at around 1 to 3 or 30 bar using nickel catalysts. The resulting methane can be utilized in the existing gas turbines or infrastructure, can be injected directly into the gas grid. So it won't need any additional capital intensive processes. It's very important in the power to gas process, and it's attractive because it provides large scale energy storage and uses existing infrastructure. The efficiency also ranges from around 50 to 60%, same as methanol synthesis. And now that we're talking about power to gas, another way of producing power to gas is e-ammonia, which is by Haber-Bosch process. It's mostly used to replace fossil-derived fertilizers. We can use it as for chemical e-chemical fertilizer, and it's a potential carbon-free fuel. The pathway uses hydrogen from electrolysis and nitrogen from air separation. They react around 300 to 500 degrees Celsius at around 150 to 300 bar in the presence of iron-based catalysts to form ammonia. The chemistry is old. It's just green because we use the green hydrogen. Ammonia can be burned directly in power plants, used in fuel cells, or cracked back into hydrogen. It's being seriously considered for maritime shipping and hydrogen transport, as it has higher energy density than compressed hydrogen gas. Efficiency-wise, Haber-Bosch process achieves around 55 to 60% energy conversion from electricity to e-ammonia. Pankaj, if you can go to the next slide. So here we categorize, we separate the power to gas from power to liquid pathways. Mostly, it's point-worthy to note that power to gas have a higher overall efficiency than power to liquid. And since it doesn't use further upgrading and scaling up, it is much more capital cost effective as well. Mostly the main products of PTL are e-methanol, e-kerosene, e-diesel, synthetic gasoline, or naphtha. These are all drop-in, transportable, and can use existing logistics.
If we talk about power to gas, we have to focus on the ammonia part here, right? Majorly, ammonia is the major, pathway that we are using currently, right? From power to gas. And then, of course, we also have e-methane as well, which is used in as a drop-in replacement for natural gas that we have, right?
Yes, yes.
Then
and it's
after power to gas, yeah, go ahead.
Yes. No, go ahead.
After power to gas, we have the power to liquid pathway, which is a separate, or you can say the second best or second most permanently used pathway for e-fuel production, wherein we are getting a liquid fuel at the end, right? So again, the pathway is the same. We have the green hydrogen production, we have captured carbon dioxide coming in, and then we have FT or methanol synthesis pathways. So either we form fuels from that can be used as marine fuel, jet fuel, or we produce chemicals that are used as feedstock for then other further processing in various kind of industries. So we have synthetic crude, we have DME, we have methanol that is produced from power to chemical pathway. So if you want to expand on this part on power to chemicals, Rishika.
Mostly when we do methanol synthesis, we get power to chemicals, which can either then be upgraded to synthetic crude, DME, and methanol, which can also, like, apart from the fuel market, it can be used as feedstock for plastics. So as you can see, a lot of things are plastic, and it's one of the biggest contributor. So a lot of players like European Energy and Liquid Wind, they are targeting the e-chemicals market so that they can provide feedstock from e-fuels that can later be leveraged as that can later replace the conventional plastic market.
So typically at present, the state of the art, what we are doing is we are producing plastics typically from crude oil, right?
Yeah.
But replacing that with these e-chemicals that we have as feedstock, we can reduce the GHG emission from these kind of products by up to 90%. So again, it's again a matter of the cost part. I think that's where the hiccup is, the major hiccup is there, and we'll talk about it more in the challenges section. But that's the advantage. We can save up to 90% in terms of the emissions part here, right?
Another point I want to highlight is that e-fuel is mostly considered carbon neutral because so for a fuel to be considered as carbon neutral, it has to emit around the same amount of CO2 upon combustion that it has captured. So biofuel do not give that advantage. E-fuel does, because it uses captured carbon, and while when the e-fuel are combusted, it produces more or less, not more, less or equal to the same CO2 that has been utilized in the production of e-fuel. So
So when you say it is
inherent,
less, means that e-fuel can also be carbon negative in nature, is it?
yes, but it again depends on the scaling up of the technology of CO2 capture, which is still nascent in this era.
Okay, got it. And also on the equivalent CO2 that we have coming out of
Mhm.
the fuel while utilization, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that, Trishika. Next up, we have the comparison of various kind of pathways that we have just discussed on three broad parameters. First up is the global warming potential, and then second, the water demand, that is the water that is required to produce a unit of e-fuel, and then the total production costs. Now, highlight is on cost part here, because if you see in the table as well, the last column on the table is our basically conventional crude oil based fossil fuels. Now, if you look at all the various pathways, e-fuels are typically 1.5 to 5 times higher in terms of the cost part than their fossil fuel equivalents. And it's majorly associated to how they are being produced, right? First up, we have if you look at the ingredients that are required for producing of e-fuels, first up, we have the RE cost, renewable electricity cost. Then we have the production of hydrogen from there. So the capex that we are requiring in an electrolyzer plant, the BOP system that we need there, the cost and the energy that we require to demineralize the water that can be used in an electrolyzer. These all then add up. And then we also have cost up from the captured carbon, because carbon capture is not very viable or very economical at scale as of now. It's also a very cost intensive activity, because we need separate installations at factories or industries to capture that flue gases carbon, and then store it, send it out to processing at e-fuel plants. So that builds up the cost to a level that e-fuels as of now are not that economical, or at cost parity with conventional fuels. And that is the major hiccup. Because if you look at other two parameters, e-fuels are shining very bright. They save a lot of water demand, and they have much less global warming potential as well compared to our conventional fossil fuels. That's like multiple times in nature. But the major hiccup, as I said again, is the cost part, where e-fuels still need a lot of technical breakthroughs, the reduction of costs in hydrogen production, carbon capture, and also a lot of policy push is also needed at this time in terms of creating mandates for incentivizing or mandating the uptake of e-fuels by hard to abate sectors, the transport sector, and others. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Pankaj. So, what I would like to present in the next few slides is how ICT or digital solutions are enhancing the operations, the trust and traceability, and also integration to the larger ecosystem for e-fuels. To start with, here I have what I would like to showcases how uh, you know the operational efficiency can be enhanced. So obviously, modern plants operate like a living, I would say, digital ecosystem, but there are thousands of sensors continuously tracking parameters such as temperature, pressure, hydrogen purity, then something like a renewable energy availability. These are tracked. uh, this constant data flow can be analyzed with something like an AI algorithm that adjusts the electrolyzer's performance. I mean, help in adjusting the performance of the electrolyzer, and with that analysis, it can take action in case of power fluctuations or optimize the process of, let's say, carbon dioxide conversion in real time. Similarly, digital twin, which is basically a virtual model of the entire plant, it can help in simulating a what if kind of a scenario where you can improve the system before, it's kind of a before it occurs, right? You can improve the overall system and make it more efficient dealing with any kind of downtime before actually it happens. And ICT, if you look at the digital ecosystem, it acts like a command center for the plant, where the entire operations can be uh, sort of a controlled. The whole value chain can be adjusted, like there can be control over power inputs from wind or solar, manage grid interactions, or oversee any kind of carbon dioxide capture integration. These can also be overseen with the help of ICT dashboards, right? This is
So,
overall how, yeah, Pankaj.
Sam, just a thought here. So, are you also, mentioning that with these tools, can we also have a level of predictive maintenance in these all aspects of electrolyzers and carbon capture and the production of e-fuels as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. It can actually unite the operational data and provide the predictive analytics in a way that you can automate decision making and
Mhm.
deal with any kind of idle time or energy losses or human
Mhm.
error, So that
Yeah.
it gives you a lot of control over the predictive analytics, as well as looking at the overall tuning of the different
Mhm.
parameters for an operation, right?
Got it. Got it.
So
Good to know.
there are some examples of contributing technologies, as you can see: IoT sensors and edge devices, then AI based energy management system, predictive analytics platforms. These are some of the examples, major examples of how the efficiency is provided. uh, in this slide, what we have tried to show is how ICT is helping in terms of the trust and transparency. As you can understand, in e-fuel ecosystem, traceability is very important, right? There's high credibility given to the traceability factor, and ICT systems can create something like a digital product passport or unique digital identities that can help for every batch of or every liter of e-fuel across the life cycle to be tracked, and that traceability itself gives the sense of, I would say, trust as well. So these passports basically records details such as renewable energy, renewable electricity sources. What are the sources for the renewable electricity? Carbon dioxide origin, production date, then transport route. You know, Also maybe it can also verify the carbon intensity. This is some sort of a traceability and trust factor that can be built with ICT. Now, building trust, another factor is the transparent and tamper-proof verification process. So, with a unified system, ICT system or a portal, you can combine the secure data sharing with blockchain-based records, which gives the highest, I would say, trust or confidence level, which can reduce the greenwashing risk, uh, you know, and provide the opportunity to create create a, I would say, a compliance-driven market for something like, I think, sustainable aviation fuels is something, or carbon neutral transport fuels. So this compliance-driven markets are something which is very important, and about blockchain-based system is the best way possible to go about it. And here also I have given some examples of contributing technology. A few I have already mentioned, and rest are over there, like digital signature and identity management, AI-powered data validation, compliance automation engines. So these are something that can make these things possible. Can we go to the next slide?
Just a thought here, Sam.
Yeah.
Interestingly, that you mentioned here that we can have a digital product passport kind of a thing with e-fuels as well, right? Because
Yes.
for me,
Absolutely.
what I know is that we can have it on a very distinct kind of products. Like e-fuels is a commodity, right? Commoditized product.
Yes. Yes.
So, to know that it's possible to have a tracker like that on a commodity, which is like commodity is like same everywhere. It's not a differentiator. No differentiation is there in that product, right? But still, if we can have this as a feature, that's very interesting to know, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of work going on this, and we are going to see more of, blockchain-based recording or verification in the coming
Mm,
days.
yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next one, which is the final, I wanted to focus on the integration with the larger, I would say, energy ecosystem or the market. So, I would say modern plants operate in a complicated, it's very complicated web of renewable power sources, carbon dioxide suppliers, logistic networks. So, an ICT integration platform, what it can provide is linking these dots, these particular functions in real time, and provide data like electricity prices, carbon dioxide capture schedule, transport system, pipeline. So it kind of create a way to match the demand and supply in many ways, and ensure that it is in terms of production, it's in terms of supply, in terms of visibility, that can be provided with an ICT dashboard or a portal, which can unify multiple sources, as well as internally also it can show the data. By using, I would say, shared data models, secure digital links, operators can align this production with, you know renewable availability, match the carbon dioxide supply with demand, like I mentioned, and obviously coordinate with the deliveries, reducing delays. you know uh, AI driven scheduling is another way. Obviously, AI it makes it possible for an entire system to go on its own and track the uh, when everything is scheduled, when it is will be available, and the automation is what makes it possible for contracts, compliance, and supply chain to run more efficiently. So this, I would say, orchestration ensures smooth production, then verified carbon data, and faster audits as well, right? And of course, reliable delivery. So it makes equal not just the pilot concept for those who are starting, but a market ready part. It's market ready to go into the entire ecosystem of the energy, all the way to the energy transition. So these are some of the examples, like I mentioned, energy management systems, logistics management workflow. So this gets you all the way to the market efficiently. And with the previous things that I mentioned about production being efficient and trust and traceability, it's a full circle, kind of what it can provide.
Thank you, Sam, for that. So now we'll move on to the third section of the webinar, which is throwing light on the pioneers of the field, who is building up e-fuels at scale, and what are the innovations that they are, working on. So first up, we have the push from public bodies. What are the initiatives that are happening? So maybe Rishika, you take this up.
Yeah, thank you, Pankaj. So I wanted to basically highlight that without a public mandate, without a force, without a demand creation, nothing can uh, go from 0 to 100 actually. So these are some of the 2025 mandates that has pushed the public bodies to create a demand. So first off, we will start with Refuel EU for aviation sector. So that mandates that there should be a blending of SAF into conventional jet fuel starting 2025 January. And minimum 2% SAF blending should be around 2025, 6% by 2030, and up to 70% by 2050. And in that mandate, there is a sub-mandate for synthetic e-fuels of around 0.7% by 2030, and so on and so forth. This is for aviation mostly. Now, it's interesting to note that even this mandate is not on the airlines as much as it is on the airports. So the obligation is basically on the fuel suppliers. Only fuels that cut life cycle greenhouse gases by their specific amounts qualify. SAF types with higher savings are the most valuable, and there has to be a reporting and certification rules to track and verify those fuels. To put simply, Refuel EU forces the market to buy SAF, creating guaranteed demand that encourages investment in SAF production. The challenge is that current SAF and e-fuel supply is very small and expensive. So life cycle savings vary by fuel type from around 65% to 100% compared to fossil kerosene. So Refuel EU can create a push for the aviation sector to buy fuels which are not fossil derived. And second, we have again from Europe, which is Fuel EU. This is for the maritime sector. So Fuel EU maritime targets ships over 5,000 gross tons, calling at EU ports. Ships must gradually meet stricter greenhouse gas intensity targets for fuel. Mostly, this is also started around January 2025, and it needs around carbon negative of 2% around 2025 to 80% by 2050, which is basically cutting down of GHG by the maritime sector. Then we have SF tax credits or grants by the IRA US. So IRA has given tax incentives rather than a demand to the state, which basically tells us that if the off-takers purchase carbon credits or regarding e-fuels or SAF or anything which is carbon neutral, they would get a tax incentive according to section 45Z. And then this part which I really want to touch upon is RFNBOs, which is renewable fuels from a non-biogenic origin. Now this basically puts an end to the food versus fuel debate. RFNBO certification specifically recognizes the e-fuels, and it clarifies that the hydrogen must be green hydrogen, and as well as creates a mandate on temporal as well as geographical correlation. So temporal correlation means that any renewable electricity supplier should produce hydrogen and vice versa, or the hydrogen production should have a renewable electricity grid. So that can be a proof of concept that hydrogen that is being sourced by companies, which they are saying is green hydrogen, is from a renewable electricity. Similarly, for geographical, it not only puts an advantage for the supply logistics, it also is another proof of concept is that any geographical location which has renewable grid supply should have a hydrogen mandate, and then only can these electrofuels can be classified as RFNBOs, and they will obtain a certificate as ISCC, which is International Sustainability and Carbon Certificate, or Certify, or TUV Renland, or equivalent certification. Certified RFNBOs are only eligible for various EU funding starting from 2030. And these include participation in the GHG quota system as well. Now, RED III directive, which is the Renewable Energy Directive, is the non-legislative mandate, but it also makes a compulsion of RFNBO to be in place. So it states that member states of EU must ensure that at least 5.5% of transport fuels come from RFNBOs. That creates creates pressure on this Fuel E maritime regulation as well as our Fuel EU. These complement it. It creates a pressure that e-fuels must be the one that we utilize, not from biofuels. So in a sense, we can have a lot of we can use hydrogen rather than take up the food feedstock And it requires around 14.5% GHG intensity reduction in transport fuels by 2030. So in total, all these incentives and mandates create a demand pressure, which will eventually scale up the supply for e-fuels.
Now we'll talk about the specific stakeholders. Starting from this slide, we have HIF Global first of all. So these are the major companies that are working in the e-fuels domain. So HIF is based out of Texas, US, and it produces e-methanol, e-gasoline, e-liquefied gas, and is also working on e-SAF. Back in September 2024, the company partnered with Idemitsu, MOL, and JOGMEC. So these companies invested in HIF to expand its capacity across Japan. Now HIF has a plan or a 2035 vision to produce 150K barrels of e-fuels per year, per day, not per year, 150K barrels per day. And that will lead to the recycling, or you could say the sinking of 25 million tons of CO2 per year. That's a very ambitious goal that the company has for the next 10 years. Next up, we have Infinium, again based in US. The company is active in ESAF, e-diesel, e-naphtha. The company has already started its project Pathfinder, that is producing and exporting e-fuels back from 2023-24. Infinium has also received the ISCC Plus certification for its e-fuels and e-naphtha. And it's on path to become one of the largest e-fuel companies, producing 23,000 tons of ESAF per year. So next up we have 12. Again, it's based out of US, Silicon Valley. The company is active in ESAF, e-marine fuel, e-diesel, e-chemicals as well, and CO2 made trademark materials that are made from captured CO2. The company has received significant Series B funding, as a lot of partnerships have been made with the airlines to produce 50,000 gallons of ESAF in its first facility. And then it has also signed a lot of offtake agreements with airlines like Alaska Airlines, companies like Microsoft, Shopify, to expand its e-jet or e-aviation fuel commodity. Now, all of these companies have a lot of focus on ESAF. And these are the areas on which we are expecting e-fuels to make the first impact. ESAF and e-marine fuels, because they can be regulated very closely with governments, and the mandates can also be issued easily. I think that's what we think. That is the major reason why a lot of companies are focusing firstly on ESAF, and then gradually they'll move on to transportation fuels like e-gasoline, e-diesel as well. So apart from this, we also have these three companies. Rishika, you want to take them up?
Yes. So in stakeholders, we also have Ineratech. Apart from ESF, they are focusing on e-kerosene as well as the e-chemicals market. So Ineratech is essentially a German modular engineering company that explicitly designs modular power to liquid units. In mid-2025, Ineratech inaugurated Era 1, their flagship multi-module plant in Frankfurt. And the company describes it as Europe's largest operational PTL plant with an initial capacity of up to 2,500 tons per year of synthetic fuels. The plant sources biogenic CO2 from nearby biogas waste streams and uses hydrogen byproduct from local chlorine production as the hydrogen feed. This highlights a practical route to early low carbon feedstock that lower input costs and improves life cycle accounting. Importantly, Ineratech secured a 70 million euro package from European Investment Bank. And that basically highlights how the European government is hell-bent on pushing the PTL to the brim. And Ineratech's business model is the modular replication, so which means build smaller synergize containers and then deploy them in industrial parks with local CO2 and hydrogen units. Then scale that capacity by adding more and more modules. That model shortens lead times and reduces single project capex compared to one giant plant. Next, we have European Energy. As mentioned, they are the first one to do e-methanol. So essentially, they were a renewables developer that has moved to PTX, and their flagship is Caso e-methanol facility, with annual capacity of around 42,000 tons. And they have recently been in a partnership with Siemens to have electrolyzer supply, and they are targeting shipping and chemical markets, and they also use biogenic CO2, which is CO2 from biogas plant. Lastly, we have Nordic Electrofuel. Though this is a very small and startup European electrofuel company, and just have established a PTL plant, pilot plant, they have long-term ambition of 1 billion liters by 2033, which is a lot. So, and I think government believes in them also, because Hydrom from Oman as well as EU has given them a lot of push in terms of 40 million euro grant and offtake agreements. So these are the recent global partnerships that has happened this year. As Sam mentioned, ICT is enabling e-fuels a lot. So we have a very key headline, which is Hinoshio has launched Andrea, a powerful optimization platform for making or for establishing a hydrogen power to X projects. Apart from that, Infinium is carving out its future plan with Project Roadrunner, and it's a multi-KTPA ESF and e-diesel plant in Texas, and it has offtake agreements with American Airlines and IAG. In August, Rolls-Royce and Ineratech have entered into a strategic partnership to use e-fuel as backup power for data center. Prometheus Fuels is commercializing DAC CO2 feedstock for PTX. And as we know, the biggest player of them is HIF Global with Haruoni demonstration facility. They have received the ISCCU certificate and is the largest PTX player in the EU market. Along with that, we have 12. 12 is essentially a carbon transformational company. They are looking to do everything electrified. They want to do e-chemicals, they want to do ESF, and recently they have announced a new agreement with Autodesk to procure power to liquid SF certificates in advance to maintain price volatility.
All right, so next up we have Ed from MOG who will throw light upon what they are doing interestingly in the e-fuel space. Ed, up to you.
Thanks. Yeah, so at Amagi, we are developing an ammonia to power technology to decarbonize heavy industry and heavy duty transportation. So just a little bit about the company. We have about a little more than 100 employees, and we are headquartered in Brooklyn, New York. We were founded in November 2020, so we're quickly approaching our 5th anniversary. And we also have 2 other offices, one in Houston, Texas, and one in South Korea. The picture there is actually our new product development and testing facility in Houston that we just opened this summer. And we've received about $300 million in funding to date. Next slide, please. So why ammonia? We think ammonia is going to be one of the strong candidates for a future fuel, and this part of this is because the global clean ammonia supply is accelerating right now. There are about 300 million tons of ammonia projects that have been announced across the world. About 34 of those projects have reached FID or received some level of financing at this point. And we have about 8 million tons of firm projects or even small pilots that are currently operating. And when we think about ammonia, it's really it can be used as a fuel or as a hydrogen carrier. So of the projects that are going to be exporting hydrogen, 90% of those projects will be producing ammonia as the fuel. Next slide, please. And another aspect of ammonia that really makes it a strong candidate as a future low carbon fuel is that there's already a large infrastructure in place to store and transport ammonia. So ammonia, there are about 200 million tons produced today, and about a quarter of that is the merchant ammonia market. So it gets traded, from its production site to other users. And to enable that trade, there are about 200 ports around the world that have the ability to handle ammonia, load and unload ammonia. In the U.S., we have about 4,000 kilometers of pipelines that can transport ammonia, largely from the Gulf Coast, where it's produced, up to the upper Midwest, where it's used in largely in agriculture. And then 20 million tons of ammonia are traded using gas-carrying vessels, so large gas-carrying ships on the ocean, as well as barges in rivers and inland waterways. And if you look at the actual fleet of vessels today, there's about 500 vessels that would be capable of carrying ammonia. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's already in place that can really give ammonia a head start as a future fuel. So what Amagee's technology is a catalyst, and our catalyst can decompose ammonia to hydrogen and nitrogen at lower temperatures than other commercially available catalysts. And this catalyst lies within an ammonia cracking module that we also develop ourselves. And this module provides the heat required to enable the catalyst to break down the ammonia. So we have a couple different solutions to generate electricity. The first would be to crack the ammonia, purify that ammonia, and put it into a hydrogen fuel cell. And the second would not require the purification process. It would just take that cracked ammonia and put it directly into a hydrogen engine. And so, as you can see on the right here, those are our two concepts that we're looking at for now. The engine concept is primarily used on power generation, distributed power applications. Then the fuel cell will largely be for maritime applications. To date, we've demonstrated our technology 4 times. The first proof of concept demonstration back in 2021 was a drone, and we then scaled that up in about under a year, about 10 months, to a tractor, a John Deere tractor that was retrofitted. We then, about 7 months later, we retrofitted a truck, a Class 8 truck, and that all these ran on our ammonia to power system coupled with a fuel cell. And then our most significant demonstration was last September, and we actually sailed a tugboat using ammonia about 2 hours north of our headquarters on the Hudson River in New York. And so now we're really beginning to, over the next year or so, we'll be deploying our first commercial pilots and beginning to commercialize the technology.
Small question here on this slide. So once you demonstrated the technology here on a drone, starting with a drone, right? And then you moved on from a drone to tractor to truck to tugboat. So the cracking part happens within the system, within the vehicle itself, and then the utilization happens via fuel cell?
Yeah, exactly. So the cracking system is within the vehicle. So we removed the engine, the existing engine from the vehicle, and we put an ammonia tank, our cracking system, and the fuel cell.
Fuel cell. Okay, so even it can be made so small that it can also fit on a drone.
Yeah. So that's the idea. Because our catalyst is able to crack the ammonia at a lower temperature, we can make the cracking system, we could really reduce the size of it. And we have, so we developed a small modular cracking system.
Because yeah, that's really interesting, because these aviation applications like drones, or for surveillance drones or military drones, they are currently limited by batteries, because once you increase the battery pack size, the weight of the drone increases, right? So if we have a more energy dense fuel, that can really change the game here. It's good to know.
I would say, this drone was largely a proof of concept for now. We're looking at much bigger mobility applications, like maritime in the near term. So it's probably not a near term application for something like drones or aviation, but longer term, I think as we continue to scale the technology down, I think that could be an option.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then finally, yeah, just looking at the different applications of our technology. So, like I mentioned earlier, maritime power. We have we worked with Samsung Heavy Industries. We have an approval in principle for our technology to power an ammonia carrier, and so that would be eventually providing full power, probably starting off with auxiliary power. Most maritime vessels have maybe 1 to 3 megawatts of auxiliary systems that run the lights and the HVAC, and then they have the main propulsion systems, which could be in the tens of megawatts. And for stationary power, we've recently announced a partnership with GS and Hyundai Infracore, so this would be GS is an EPC. They develop an auxiliary system and the fuel supply. Hyundai Infracore would provide the genset, and then the city of Pohang is where this would be deployed. They're one of Korea's 6 hydrogen cities, so looking to really incentivize the use of hydrogen and ammonia for clean power. And then also our catalyst is a standalone product. So the idea of large scale cracking, moving hydrogen from a place where it's inexpensive to produce to a place where it might be expensive to produce. So our catalyst, we're working with a Japanese company called JGC that's developing a pilot large scale cracking plant. So we'll be working there. And yeah, well, thanks for the time. That's just my quick snapshot of Amagi there.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Great to know about the interesting stuff you're doing at Emoji. All right, so in the interest of time, I'll be moving a bit quickly on these last slides here. First up, we have the patent landscape of e-fuels. We see a rising trend in terms of the patent being filed, starting from 74 in 2022, rising up to 146 in 24. Total of 312 patents filed in the last 3 years. We have a very spread out geographical split, with the US leading with 28% of patents. Then we have the global patent WIPO office, followed by European patent office, and then China and rest of the world. Now, in terms of the patent applicants, the top applicants, and what are they focusing on in terms of the innovation part, we have several areas here. First up, we have the replacement of like production of e-fuels or a direct replacement of fossil hydrocarbons, usage of dilute CO2 streams to perform carbon capture, then CO2 separation units, advancements in that part, integration of waste heat in CO2 and coal electrolysis systems. And then again, we have a domain of separation techniques for CO2, DACC, that is direct air carbon capture, and then utilization of e-fuels as a feedstock as well as a fuel. And then we also have innovations happening in the fuel injector parts, which is basically modifying the engines that can utilize these e-fuels directly to combust and produce power. We have companies like Topsoe, EDL, Katagon, Toyo from Japan, and Infinium as the top patent applicants as well. Then last, we have the challenges. That is the second last slide that we have. So we've talked about e-fuels. We have sang a lot of songs about the advantages. How do they fare better in terms of the performance or the GHG part over conventional fuels? But again, what are the aspects that detain them from being commercial at a large scale as of now? So up to you, Rishika. Just over the slide a bit quickly.
Yeah. So the major challenge of e-fuel not being currently global yet is the hydrogen production cost. That is the major barrier. So right now, producing hydrogen from renewable electricity is costs around 3 to 5 times than fossil fuel hydrogen. And on top of that, we have a carbon constraint as well. Even if the carbon is cheaper around point source, when the heavy industries or hard to abate industries decarbonize, we'll lose that point source. And then there is a limited DAC, supply chains. And DAC currently costs around 250 to 600 per ton. So the main two ingredients of producing e-fuels, which is carbon and hydrogen, is still nascent and costs a lot. So now there are off-takers in the market. They want to buy, they want the carbon credits, they want everything. But the problem is they cannot pay for it. Unless the costs come down, we cannot have a e-fuel at scale. And then again, there is a supply chain barrier as well as low energy efficiency, which go hand in hand. So around the demand sides, there we don't have the infrastructure, and the infrastructure where we have is long away. So to create that infrastructure, create pipelines, and even integrate into the existing grids, it's going to take a lot of intensive energy as well as capital. And
policy push
even
as
if
well,
we
right?
do, yes.
So I mean, the X factor here, I think, is the policy push, right? That's needed for industries like
yes,
this,
especially
which cannot
the
become
ones. Yes.
which cannot
Go on,
become
Pankaj.
economically viable on their own. For example, we have battery recycling as well, right? A
Yes.
lot of public bodies focus and government focus is needed there in terms of policies, mandates, even financial push in order to make it viable in the better interest of society. That is what I would say.
Yeah, I think that is where the renewable of non-biological origin comes into play, where they are acknowledging that the hydrogen that needs to be in the electrofuels should be in the same supply area. So, that can be a proof, as well as that will lower down the supply chain barriers. Again, when we go from just producing H2 and CO2, then overall create a fuel, the energy efficiency lowers. The modern electrolyzers have efficiency around 65 to 75% till now. So more R&D is required so that we can have a much better efficiency around the conversion process. And then there is competition with the other parts as well. We need water. So for H2 production, we need purified water. And that is a big issue or big challenge. Second, renewable energy at this point is not matching the entire electricity demand, let alone the H2 demand right now. So there's competition from renewable electricity as well as water resources. That is a limiting factor for e-fuel adoption. So overall, the mandates creating a demand will push to have more renewable energy, to have much more water purification things. So e-fuel can actually with itself bring up a lot of technologies that are still nascent or at a TRL of 7. So that's my assessment of the whole e-fuel not being globalized yet.
Thanks for that, Rishika. Okay, last up we'll have the future focus for e-fuels. What do we think? What might happen in the coming years? So as of now, the present time scenario suggests that we are currently having a lot of first of a kind plants, FOK plants that we have. Companies are moving on from pilot and demonstration stages to early commercialization because a lot of offtake agreements are being signed currently. Now, how the cost structure is determined today, it's very dependent on the acquisition cost of green hydrogen and the capex of electrolyzer. But as of now, today, speaking in 2025, the overall share of e-fuels as a percentage in terms of the global fuel market, it's very tiny, right? If we look at the 2-3 years down the line from here, we are expecting a pickup in volumes for e-fuels. We are also expecting costs to drive down once we are achieving economies of scale in hydrogen production. We are also seeing a lot of ramp up of carbon capture capacity across the globe. As you said, the supply chain, problem with captured carbon is a very big concern as of now. So we are expecting it to tone down a bit, right? And but still, we do not see it reaching cost parity with conventional fuels just 3 years down the line.
Yeah.
Now, if we talk about further down the line, 5+ years, there's two kind of scenarios that we have envisioned. First up is an optimistic scenario, so that we are having such a level of cost reduction in e-fuel production part, so that at least e-kerosene and e-diesel and e-marine fuel are being able to able to achieve cost parity with conventional fuels, along with the push of policymakers for regulated demand. But again, on a industry or on a realistic level, e-fuels are still going to be on the mercy of the trio of these three parts. First up is the cost reduction, as well as the supply chain security of green hydrogen and captured carbon, as well as the policy push from public bodies across the globe. So e-fuels future kind of depends on the balance of these three things and how effectively we are able to tackle that. That is my view. If you have any other view, Rishika and Ed or Sam, you can also share it right now.
So my view is that the technology works. It's a very good concept. The economics, however, doesn't. So with every project that is coming up, I think the cost is getting pushed down little by little. And that I think around after 2030, around 2040, 2045, I can see e-fuels having the same momentum as biofuels right now. So I'm optimistic about e-fuels, because then again, hard to abate sectors cannot have biofuels, right?
Yes, yes. The only way that I can be optimistic, to that level, is if I see the story of RE power. Like we had solar 2010. If you compare solar offtake or solar uptake power prices in 2010 per kilowatt hour, and compare it to 2025, we have seen a very drastic, reduction in cost. Same with energy storage batteries. So if e-fuels go that way, then we can have a very optimistic scenario realization maybe by 2030, 2030 or 2035 at least by then. But in effect, it looks like it's going to take maybe more than that. Any other thoughts here, or shall we close? We are already past time, 8 minutes. So that completes the webinar for today for e-fuels to be cost competitive with conventional fuels.